Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! We'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs. Welcome into the OG Hour on the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It is Thursday, August 15th, and we are here to get you ready for another weekend of Chiefs football. My name is Patrick Allen, here with you as always, and it doesn't get any more OG than Adam Best, co-founder of arrowheadaddict.com, the blog father, as it were. It's been a minute since we've been together. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. I was telling you before the show that went to Denver last weekend just to see some art, get some good food, hang out, nature, all that. But I caught bronchitis. You know, it's very, very contagious. It makes you feel like a loser down in the dumps. And I think I'm like kind of shaken free of that. But thrilled to be back with you. Now I'm the blog father, but you're an actual father. How's that going? Are you sleeping some?
Yeah, it's not too bad. He's 11 weeks now. He sleeps for sometimes he'll sleep for like a 4-hour stretch and you got to get up with him. Last night he slept for 7 hours. So we were golden until I got up with him at 5 a.m., but I had gotten so much sleep that I didn't mind. So he's pretty good, man. But he'll wake up sometimes once a night, you deal with him, and then maybe get another hour. So it's just where, it's a grind. So now I'm in the grind portion of it, which will continue until, he leaves and goes to college. But it's so dealing with that transition now, but it's great. He's wonderful. He's healthy. He's happy. He's smiling at me. And he has never been to Denver. So that's a feather in his cap. What were you thinking going to Denver? There's art and is great theater in Kansas City. You could have gone to the Negro League Museum.
Hey, it's a great city. I'm not like my father, who's kind of a sociopath and hates all of Colorado. Anything associated with Colorado, my dad hates because of the Broncos. And hopefully I've allowed myself to become a little more well-adjusted than that. But we did go to this exhibit called Meow Wolf, and it was right by Mile High. And I may or may not have projectile vomited several times. So
yeah, it was weird for me at the Super Bowl going into the Raiders stadium and just being around Raiders stuff. But what made it better was that the Chiefs, imagery was all over the stadium as well. So that was sort of hilarious for me as a Chiefs fan, that my first time ever at the Raiders stadium was to see the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl.
We've big brothered both those teams for so long. The stigma's kind of gone. I don't really, the resentment is kind of gone. It's just there's kind of pity for them at this point. I know that probably would anger Raiders and Broncos fans, but it's kind of sad. They're not holding up their end of the bargain in terms of these historic rivalries. They're just not.
Yeah, it's kind of sad when you see some great rivalries go away. And of course they can come back, right? But I grew up in Northeast Ohio. So when I was a kid, Browns Steelers, that used to be a thing. It was a real thing. And it's actually a shame that Art Modell moved them, because when that organization went to Baltimore, it was a really well-run organization, continued to be so for many years, still is to this day. And the Steelers have kind of gone south now. But if you may remember, Ravens Steelers actually became the heated physical rivalry of the AFC North, and the Browns are just the joke of the NFL when they came back as an expansion team. So it's a bummer. As an Ohio State fan, I enjoyed the tons and tons of years in a row that we just stomped Michigan. And it started to not feel like a rivalry anymore. And so now the shoe's on the other foot. We've lost them a few times in a row. So hopefully we can get one back. But I'm with you, man. Now it's when I think about the Chiefs rivals, it's I have a disdain for the AFC West teams, but it's the Bengals, it's the Bills, it's the Ravens. Those are the teams that stand out that you got to be.
49ers, right? I know they're in the NFC,
yeah.
but they're probably the biggest ultimate stumbling block the Chiefs have faced and really passed. I mean, Tom Brady, but he's gone now. So
yeah. Well, listen, everybody, we got a great show for you today. I titled the show Chiefs Panic Meter because, as is custom, doesn't matter if it's a preseason game, some things happen and Chiefs Kingdom panics. That's what we do. I'm not saying we're any different than any other fan base, but the stakes are high. Chiefs fans care. And so if things start to go wrong or things don't look right, they're going to talk about it. So I figured we could dive in to a few issues that I've seen Chiefs fans panicking about. And Adam and I will give you a little bit of a rating and say where we think you actually should be on the panic meter. I think that'll be a fun exercise, especially after a preseason game where the Chiefs didn't look very big. Sometimes it can be good to ground yourself and be like, oh yeah, it was a preseason game. So we'll set you straight there. And then we'll do a little preview of the Chiefs Lions game here. And we've got our member mailbag. So we don't have a read today. So let's get into it. And we'll start with the news, of course. Adam, by now, I'm sure you guys talked about it on Wacky Wednesday. Hollywood Brown has an injury on the first play of the preseason for the Chiefs on offense, catches the ball, gets tackled, dislocation at the shoulder area. And the word is out. He's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Now, this is the same injury that Tyreek Hill had a couple seasons ago. You might remember the Chiefs were without him. All Mahomes did was just light everybody up that they played while he was out. So we'll get into whether the panic meter on that, but what's your initial reaction to the Hollywood Brown injury?
That he's small and gets banged up a lot. He's not built like Tyreek Hill. So I don't really expect him to rebound as quickly and play through it as well as Tyreek Hill did. Tyreek Hill is short, but he is a fire hydrant, man. He is built. That dude is built. Hollywood Brown is kind of frail. He's a hell of a player. Great field stretcher, and I think he has a lot more to his game than people give him credit for. But I don't think he's going to be back super soon. And I don't think the Chiefs are going to rush him back. Yeah, they'd like to get him integrated, but like Juju Smith-Schuster a few years back, he's not a rookie. He's not even a second or third year player. He's been around the league. I think he's going to pick up the playbook and get on the same page as Mahomes rather quickly. I think you saw a little bit of that. So it's fine. It's not ideal, as an introduction to Kansas City, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah, it's a bummer, man. I think Chiefs fans were really excited to wash the bad taste out of their mouths that we all felt last year with the wide receiving group and thinking, okay, we've got Hollywood Brown, we've got Xavier Worthy, like guys like Sky Moore aren't even going to be on the field. We're going to go and we're going to play the Ravens on Thursday night to open the season and see this new offense in action. And now it's like, okay, you're looking at the wide receiver core again. You're like, we're going to maybe need to rely on some of these guys that we had to rely on last year who weren't very good. It's not the exact same situation. There's no MVS, but it's a bummer. But look, at a 4 to 6 week window, he's got like 3 weeks left of the preseason, puts him around a potential to return for the Ravens game, but it's unlikely. The Chiefs are not going to rush Hollywood Brown back until he's absolutely ready. There's absolutely no reason to do it. They're not even playing for January, man. They're playing for February. That's what this team is. That's what the expectation is. They're trying to three-peat. So they know that they have enough talent on their roster, sans Hollywood Brown, because they did it last year, to win enough games to get into the playoffs. And so there's absolutely no reason to rush him or anybody else that gets banged up, for that matter, back before they're ready.
God, you'd like to see him back for that revenge game, though. He could really have a blow-up game against the Ravens, introduce himself to Kansas City in spectacular fashion, and it looks like that's not going to happen now. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I think this will be a recurring theme in this discussion. The Chiefs are now like the San Antonio Spurs were during their dynasty, like the New England Patriots were. You just can't put that much stock in the regular season. They are different from every other franchise. They just have to get their key personnel into the postseason, and then they know how to navigate those waters better than anybody. So seeding does not even matter to this team. We saw that last year. They went into Buffalo and Baltimore, maybe the hardest road we've ever seen. I mean, Aaron Schatz came on our Wednesday program and said, this is the toughest road any team has ever seen if they win the Super Bowl, and they did. So I don't think they have anything to worry about. And really, it's just the Fab Five, man. It's Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris Jones, Spags, Andy Reid. If they are upright and feeling good, this team is the favorite by far to win the Super Bowl.
I will say, when it comes to the Ravens game, I don't mind that he's not going to be there for it. I mean, that's a key win to get for AFC. You know, you want to get. I'd love to get that bye week. Not so much that I'm concerned that the Chiefs can't go on the road or that they can't play an extra game and win and survive that gauntlet. They've obviously done it, but it just opens up one more game of wear and tear for potential injury to people, and so that's why I really want that number one seed. But I don't mind the fact that a team that the Chiefs very well could see in the playoffs, they just don't get to see Hollywood Brown on the Chiefs. They don't get that practice rep against him. And then you play him. And, you know, we all know the Chiefs hold some things back when they play these types of teams. They don't like to show their entire hand because they know they might see them in the playoffs. So they hold some things back. They still try to win. So this will be a nice thing to unveil if they do find themselves going up against the Ravens in the playoffs. But we're wishing a speedy recovery for Hollywood Brown. It could have been much, much worse than it was. When guys land like that, you can shatter that collarbone, and then you are donezo. You aren't playing football this season. So Hollywood Brown is going to be back, and Tyreek Hill came back and was just fine. So let's cross our fingers for a speedy recovery for him. Next up on the news item, another injury, a much more minor injury. Jawaan Taylor was carted off the field. This happens every preseason because the facilities are far away. And so anybody who gets hurt gets put on the cart and driven off the field at training camp. But inevitably, you're on Twitter, man, and you're scrolling and you see so-and-so getting carted off the field at Chiefs training camp, and you have a heart attack. And then you have to remind yourself that it's almost never serious. Sometimes it is. Jawaan Taylor's got a shoulder injury. Here's what Andy Reid said about it. He said he's going to be okay, but he's not going to play in Saturday's preseason game. I mean, this, again, goes right along with the Hollywood Brown thing, right? Like, why? If he's banged up at all, would you play him in a preseason game?
No. And the silver lining here is you get a longer look at Wanya Morris against top-tier talent. So no reason to panic here either. I'd love to see him get the reps as much as he mentally struggled last year with the penalties and just kind of getting in sync on his new team. So that is a little bit worrisome, but again, he was here last year. He had the entire offseason, and I think he'll be back in fairly short fashion, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't mind the extra reps for Wanya Morris. I can't recall if they put him on the right side last week at all, but if they do in place of Jawaan Taylor, that's great, because if that's how they're going to use him this year, if Kingsley Suamataia is going to be playing your starting left tackle and Wanya is going to be your swing guy, great. Get him some reps over there, maybe with the first team, and let Jawaan get healthy. So find a silver lining there with Jawaan Taylor. Jalen Watson is also dealing with a shoulder injury. He's not going to play Saturday. Not worried about that either. Hopefully he's back in action soon, but we may not see him until the regular season. And then lastly, on the news front, camp's over, man. They're done. They're going to play this preseason game, and it's back to Kansas City for the rest of the way. Was there anything that you heard coming out of camp this year that surprised you or excited you about the season?
No. And I've been around the Chiefs for a long, long time at this point and paid attention to a lot of training camps. And I've kind of learned not to pay attention. Not that I'm not monitoring things and watching the clips, but I just don't get into the preseason and training camp hype. For me, it's kind of torture. It's basically like if movie theaters and streamers said no movies for August, all you get to watch is trailers. That's basically the preseason. It kind of sucks. Yeah. It's like a little bit of a tease. And every year not just with the Chiefs. We hear, oh, this guy's in the greatest shape of his life, or, this camp darling is going to, make the team and show out. And not a lot of that materializes. And I think, Andy Reid has very grueling training camps. So for me, I just want to see everybody make it through the training camp. And even then, like I said earlier, the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl without probably their fourth, fifth, sixth best player in Joe Tooney. He's somewhere in that mix. So I think this team is built to overcome those kind of things. But if you really want to, kind of find something, I think you can say this rookie class feels pretty good. Maybe. How about you?
No, I think I'm with you on the training camp thing, like preseason as well, particularly with the Chiefs. I think it was a lot more exciting when they stunk, because you're watching guys that are actually going to start. Like you have no idea. They were searching for talent. They were run so poorly back in the day.
Bobby Scipio.
Yeah, Bobby Scipio and his ilk. Like now it's like, okay, like there's only a couple roster spots on the team. And so I think if you approach it, it can be fun if you approach it from the perspective of like you're just looking for little interesting things that you saw in training camp that may come to play later in the year. Like a great example would be Amir Smith-Marset last year, right? Like he goes and he plays gangbusters in the last preseason game. He has like 4 catches, a long pass, and then he gets traded to I think it was the Panthers. The Chiefs get a little compensation for somebody like that, but like everybody was on the like, oh, LaMichael Pirine, he's gonna be the backup running back. You see how good he looked, and like where's LaMichael Pirine now? So there's little things that you can glean from it, but by and large, it's this is about getting the starting level players that are going to be out there in shape, right, physically, but also installing your stuff. That's what it's about. And, maybe you evaluate a couple guys, you evaluate some guys for special teams and things like that. But look, hope springs eternal. It's the off season. And, I'm now the founding member of the Carson Steele fan club. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's the next Jim Brown. He's gonna revitalize the fullback position, right? Why not have some fun with it?
Jim Allstott, right? So He had 29 yards and 29 yards after contact, 4 broken tackles. I mean, he's a beast. He's a beast. I'm excited about it. And I think the issue with this training camp in particular, I've never seen so few training camp battles, like true training camp battles. Like Kingsley Suamataia, it seemed like he seized that job immediately. And maybe now we're kind of waiting on like CB2 and maybe another running back, but everything was pretty settled on the depth chart very fast. So there's just not a lot of drama or intrigue this year with such a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and that's good news if you're a Chiefs fan. You are watching the Arrowhead Addict podcast. This is the OG Hour. Patrick Allen here with Arrowhead Addict co-founder, the blog father, Adam Best. And we're going to get you ready for this Chiefs preseason game. It's a big preseason game coming up this weekend because I think it's the most important one, and I'll tell you why later. But if you're interested in becoming part of our Chiefs community, look, I've been telling you for weeks, you missed the boat to get in the fantasy football league. I sent out the invites, so there's nothing I can do for you there. But we have a great Chiefs community. It's a great way to support the Chiefs content that we create here for you. If you want to be involved, there's a private Discord. There's members happy hours, things like the Fantasy Football League. When we come to Kansas City, we put the bat signal out so that we can hang out with the members. So all kinds of reasons to support us. Check out the link in the description if you want to become a member of a community of like-minded Chiefs fans. We do member mailbags, our Ring of Honor level. They get questions lots of times on the show. We'll have a section of that later on. All right, so let's move on to the title of this episode, Chiefs Panic Meter. So I just was thinking about, what should we talk about on the show today? We got a preseason game coming up. It's the last show of the week. Most of the news stuff and we've covered. And I thought, well, what about all these things that people are nervous about when it comes to the Chiefs? Because it doesn't matter how good they get, doesn't matter how many Super Bowls they win, people are going to flip out about small things because they care. So let's try to help the Chiefs faithful out there, Adam, by taking on a couple of the things that Chiefs fans are maybe panicking about, maybe a little concerned about, and let's tell them exactly how concerned they should be. And let's start off with the Hollywood Brown injury. Out 4 to 6 weeks, then you could be looking at the Ravens game, the Ravens and the Bengals game. Maybe he misses the first 4 games of the season. He could start the season on IR if that's the case, if they're like, we're just not going to bring him back till game 5. So scale of 1 to 10, 1 being Patrick Mahomes has a hangnail, and 10 being the Chiefs traded Patrick Mahomes and Brody Croyle's coming back to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah. Hopefully that never happens.
Yeah.
I'm like a 3 here, mainly because Hollywood Brown probably is not going to be here for very long. So it's kind of like Charles Omenihu getting hurt. You really want to extract as much value in this short stint. And he is kind of a smaller, somewhat frail guy who has been consistently banged up during his time in the NFL. So you want to make sure he can get on the field, and it's not exactly the best omen, but this will kind of go into our next one. We've seen worse. It can't get any worse than last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the drop rate was pretty historic among the Chiefs receivers, and everything that went wrong could, essentially. So we've been here before. I think just being on Chiefs Twitter or listening to Kansas City radio this time of year, those places can be kind of negative anyways, but people are especially bored, and they're just finding problems right now. They're making mountains out of molehills, and just everyone needs to chill out. These are the 2-time champs. This is maybe the most successful run we've ever seen in NFL history to this point. So Hollywood Brown. I mean, as long as 15 is throwing the ball, I've learned to not really care who's back there catching the passes.
I think that's good, reasoned perspective. And let us know out there, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you don't have notifications turned on, turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Look, I'm going to go a little bit more panicky than you on this one, and I'll give you my reasoning. And like I said, let us know in the chat. Where are you at in the panic meter? 1, like I said, 1 being Patrick Mahomes as a hangnail, and 10 being Brody Croyle's coming back to lead the team. Okay, I'm going to go with a 5 on this one, and I'll tell you why. If this happened a little bit later in the season, like mid-season, my panic number would probably be about what yours is. It would be a 3. But this is to start the season, and so the Chiefs are trying to work in a new guy. They're trying to get some things off the ground, and they have 2 really important, critical games to their playoff race right out of the gate. They're going to be, hosting at Arrowhead, the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Cincinnati Bengals. This is an incredible opportunity for the Chiefs to start the season. And the Chiefs usually start the season really well. I know they lost to the Lions last year out of the gate, but that was a quality opponent. And let's face it, if Chris Jones plays and somebody catches a ball, they probably win that game.
Kelsey didn't play either.
And Kelsey didn't play. Yeah, right. So, but this is a massive opportunity for the Chiefs to get out to a huge lead. I think we all agree, right, that we don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to be as formidable as they've been in recent past. In fact, they could lose that division to the Miami Dolphins. And then when I think about the top teams that I'm worried about fighting the Chiefs for the number 1 seed, I'm thinking about the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Chiefs get them both at Arrowhead early in the season before anybody has any tape on any new things that they're going to do. So it's a great opportunity for the Chiefs to jump out to a lead. And I'd like them to be at their best and at their strongest, and also be able to utilize those high leverage games to work Hollywood Brown into the offense. And instead, he may not be there for the first one or the second one. He could miss both of those games. Do I think the Chiefs still have a great chance of winning those games? Absolutely, 100%. Joe Burrow typically starts the season slow. The Bengals start the season slow, so the Chiefs can take advantage of that. But when I think about him being out, I really don't like it. So I'm right in the middle on the panic meter. I'm not spazzing out, but I don't feel great about it either. If we were coming out of the gate, and we were playing, I don't know, the Raiders or something, I wouldn't be worried at all. If we had like the Raiders and the Chargers right out of the gate, I wouldn't be concerned. But this is concerning.
Yeah. I can't disagree too much. I mean, I'm just not as worried as you about him because I think we knew the deal with him coming in, but those are solid points. Yeah,
absolutely. We see going to the chat here, KCDC says we'll be fine. John says he's at a 4. Paige says, so good to see Patrick and Adam together coming over from Australia for the Bengals game, hoping Hollywood is back. Shout out to you, Paige. Have a safe trip. Your brother, the co-founder of Arrowhead Addict, Zach Best, my boss, he says he's at a 3 on this one. He's not worried at all. Gary says 5. I expect Brown will get hurt again. So that's not, I don't like that. Hopefully he doesn't. Alicia says 5, but only because it hints he's fragile. KCDC says 2. It happens. Misses week 1, 10 more days to week 2. That's a good point. That is a good point. You're starting off the season on a Thursday. Those extra days matter in a situation like this. So great point there by KCDC. Okay. All right. So we've worn that down. Not a massive deal, but not great either, I think is where we're landing on this one. Okay. Number 2 here on the panic meter, the wide receiver depth, right? That plays right off of the Hollywood Brown injury. You're looking at, when I'm looking at the depth chart and I'm like, okay, we've got Hollywood Brown, we've got Rashee Rice, we've got Xavier Worthy. Of course, you have Travis Kelce as a pass catcher, but he's not a receiver. I'm feeling great about that lineup, even though one of them's a rookie. And now you take away the veteran speedster and Hollywood Brown, and you're like, okay, well, we've got Rashee Rice and we've got Xavier Worthy. Well, that still should be better than last year, right? So where are you at in the panic meter? Whereas like a lot of Chiefs fans were kind of like, they're looking at like, now Sky Moore's going to make the team. McCole Hardman's going to make the team. I have some bad feelings about that. Where are you at on wide receiver depth?
Probably a little higher, like a 5, because Hollywood's hurt. We don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. So that situation is still kind of in limbo. And then the rest of the guys, they have their moments, but you literally cannot trust any of those guys to be consistent. They've never been consistent. Even McCole Hardman, never been consistent in Kansas City. Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, none of them have been consistent. So you can't rely on them as a 1 or 2, top 2 option, right? So if they're ancillary options, fine. They're 3rd or 4th or 5th guy in any week, you're not going to panic, but I don't know. I just would feel better if Hollywood was healthy and Rashee Rice didn't have legal issues looming and Xavier Worthy wasn't a little banged up in camp. All those factors have to make you worry a little bit with the other guys just really face planning last year.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I'm going to go 6. It's better than it was last year, but the reason I'm going 6 is because the replacement in this situation for Hollywood Brown is Justin Watson. And I like Justin Watson, but like he's not the guy I'd want to be the next man up. Like I would rather have another accomplished veteran receiver on this roster to be sort of filling that role. And like for all the good Justin Watson has done since he's been in Kansas City, like he's not that guy, right? Like I'm talking like, you'd like to have like, I don't know, like maybe not this year's version, but like Robert Woods, like 2 years ago or something, like somebody like that on the roster. That's like, he's past his prime, but he's an accomplished wide receiver. He's reliable and probably can give you something like Adam Thielen. God, I wish we had Adam Thielen on the roster.
Tyler
like
Boyd,
that.
Just someone who's reliable and consistent, even if they're not going to like set the world on fire or catch 80-yard bombs.
That's it. Tyler Boyd's another great example. So because of that, and because of the fact that Xavier Worthy is a rookie, again, had this happened midseason and Xavier Worthy had rounded into form, I'd be like, oh, we're fine. Like, we're stacked. We've got Hollywood Brown, we've got Xavier Worthy, and we've got Rashee Rice plus Travis Kelce. Not worried about the depth at all. But you just have no idea what you're going to get out of Xavier Worthy. In fact, what you're likely to get out of Xavier Worthy is not very much the first quarter of the season. Like, that's just, I hope I'm wrong, but like, he's a rookie, man. Like,
No, you're
he's
not.
a rookie.
You're not wrong. I mean, Andy Reid is probably going to have training wheels on him and only have him play during select packages. And it's probably going to take him till, I don't know, the winter, like something like December, before he's seeing a full complement of snaps. That's exactly what happened with Rashee Rice, even though Rashee Rice clearly looked like the best receiver on the Chiefs roster last year. You can't really argue with the results, right? But it is a little frustrating to see the Chiefs kind of onboard these rookies slower than the rest of the league. But we have to remember, this offense is a bit more complex, and Andy Reid likes these receivers to know all three spots, right?
Yeah. I mean, Rice was getting like 35% of the snaps early last season, even after the first week when it was clear, like, these guys can't catch. They can't get open. It's bad. So, I think it's a little more concerned. Let's go to the chat and see. Justin says, I'm not worried about the regular season at all at this point. That's fair. Sean Browning says 2. KCDC says 3. We have cap space. Justin Watson has been consistent. He's just a mid-tier player. I think Justin Watson has been consistently Justin Watson, but Justin Watson has not been consistently a consistent wide receiver. So right. Like, Justin Watson will have a game here and there where he catches a deep ball for you or makes a clutch catch, and then he'll have 3 games where he does absolutely nothing. He's out there running routes. So that's the problem with a guy like him. Whereas I think if you had a Tyler Boyd, if you had an Adam Thielen, like, you could count on him for like 40 to 55 receiving yards every single game if you needed him, and you can't. Gary says 6. Xavier Worthy is on the small side too. Might not be as durable. So we'll see. We'll see on the wide receiver depth. But I think, all things considered, if Travis Kelce's healthy this year, which he wasn't early, like most of last year, but particularly early in the season, as we know, that played a factor. I feel a little bit better about the fact that Travis is probably in pretty good shape, and hopefully it stays that way, knocking on wood, after the game this weekend. Okay, next up, we're going to stay on the depth train here and talk about tackle depth. Why don't you kick us off on this one? How do you feel about the tackle depth on this team?
I'm going to go up to a 6 with Jawaan Taylor now banged up. You don't want to see that. I'm not the highest on Wanye Morris. I think he obviously has athletic potential and looked good in moments last year. He really struggled at times. I thought he was honestly kind of horrific in that Raiders game. Not great against the Chargers either. He was a rookie. But we just haven't seen enough from him to feel super confident in him. And Kingsley Suamataia is a second-round rookie who I think has phenomenal upside. But we've seen like 6 snaps of him, and he looked good. He looked good against Josh Allen, or what is it, Josh Hines Allen or something like that now. And like a pretty damn good pass rusher. So I feel good about him, but you've got 3 guys, and none of them looked particularly good last season. One of them wasn't here. I'd feel better if they got Donovan Smith on the phone, maybe. You know what I mean? I think he's probably, him and a few other guys are around. I think they could use one more competent swing tackle on the roster.
I agree with you. Give me a veteran. Bring back Donovan, somebody. I'm going to go 7 on this one. I don't want to go full scale panic at 8, but like, you're dealing with Kingsley Suamataia is very promising, but he was taken in the 2nd round. There's a reason for that. And he's a rookie. So you got a rookie left tackle. You've got Jawaan Taylor, who wasn't terrific as it was as a starter last year and caused a lot of problems with penalties. Now he's banged up. And then you've got Wanye Morris, who you took in the 2nd round a year ago, hoping to develop that he could maybe become your left tackle. And obviously it didn't go as well as the Chiefs coaching staff had hoped, because they went and they draft Kingsley Suamataia.
Was he 3rd round? I'm trying to think.
Kingsley?
No, Wanye Morris.
Wanye Morris, you're right. Actually, yeah, I misspoke. He was the 3rd round because they took Rashee Rice in the 2nd round. Yeah. So,
you know what will make you feel better here is Patrick Mahomes is probably the best we've ever seen at avoiding sacks. Now, his pressure to sack ratio is similar to guys like Jared Goff and Tom Brady and that ilk. But when you think about how much pressure he invites and that he's still almost unsackable, he makes these guys' jobs so much easier. I think that's actually why you see the Chiefs investing so much in the interior line. I think they're more worried about that pressure getting to Mahomes because he's just so good at evading anything from the exterior that it's really hard to panic about our tackles when they switched tackles last year and still won the Super Bowl, right? 2 new tackles were imported, and Orlando Brown wasn't in town for very long. Andrew Wiley wasn't a starter for very long. They haven't had continuity at tackle at all, and it really hasn't mattered all these years except for Super Bowl 55 of course.
And that's a fair point. And I would argue that the Chiefs offense, if they were to go back right now and replay that Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, I'm not saying they would win because that was a really good Buccaneers team. That defense was incredible on that day. But I think it would be a much closer game because the offense and Patrick Mahomes, it was not yet designed to deal with what they went up against that day against the Buccaneers. And when they played the Buccaneers earlier that season, they were lighting them up. Tyreek Hill was lighting them up downfield in the first quarter. The game was over after the first quarter. It took a couple of years for them to change the way that they play football, to be able to dink and dunk. And so if they find themselves in that situation now, Mahomes has the tools, the Chiefs have the plays to counteract that. So I think they're much more lethal and deadly now than they were before, where at that point Mahomes was still, playing fuck it Tyreek down there somewhere. And he just didn't have the time he needed to do that version of the offense. It's different now. So as you pointed out, okay, they get Donovan Smith off the street. You don't feel great about it. I was wondering if Wanya Morris would be starting by some point next year because Donovan Smith had been so bad the year before with Tampa Bay, and they go and they win the Super Bowl. So, maybe it's a bit of an overreaction for me to place the panic meter at a 7, but there's a lot of unproven there for me. One thing that is keeping me from getting too worried is Joe Thuney. You've always got Joe Thuney in your back pocket. If you need him to slide over to left tackle or even right tackle, you can probably do it. And so that's something that I consider him part of the tackle depth on this team. But, look, hopefully – go ahead.
He makes whoever plays next to him look better too. That's how good he is. That's how smart he is. That's typically how durable he is. I just wanted to mention Andy Heck too. Andy Heck is one of the premier offensive line coaches in the NFL, has done a tremendous job making sure that young guys like Trey Smith, like Creed Humphrey hit the ground running. And by all accounts, he's going to do that with Kingsley Suamataia, who might be a little bit more raw, but is probably as good of an athlete as you'll see almost at left tackle.
Yes, and I'm hoping by next year we're sitting here and we're not even having this conversation because if Kingsley is what I think many of us think he's going to be, then you're sitting there and you're like, oh, you're feeling really good. Like you've got a talented physical skill set in Wanya Morris as a swing tackle, Jawaan Taylor, a couple of years in the system. You've got your left tackle locked down and Kingsley, and now you can start adding to that depth. Okay, let's move it on to the special teams performance versus the Jaguars. This is one where, every at least twice a year, there's a fire Dave Toub movement with Chiefs fans because somebody fumbles a punt or they give back a big return or something like that. How concerned were you with how the special teams played in that first game against the Jaguars, and where do you rank them on the panic meter?
5, just because it was pretty bad, but he's one of the longer tenured special teams coaches in the league. He's figured it out before. They, in high leverage moments, usually the Chiefs special teams play really well. We've seen that. I mean, a special teams play might have won them, not the last Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl before that. The first time they won a Super Bowl, McCole Hardman had a huge return that may have sparked that comeback, that monstrous comeback against the Houston Texans when they were down, I don't know, what was it, 24-3 or something like that. I don't know if that happens without that run back. So I also think with the new rules, you saw some teams kicking all the way into the end zone and getting touchbacks. And it's kind of like, why not play around? Why not get some experience with these new kickoff rules? I think that's some of it. Dave Tobe is just trying to figure out what the rest of the league is going to do. He's still trying to figure out who the guys he wants to keep are. So it's just really hard to get. I mean, as good as the Chiefs are on offense and defense, even if their special teams is catastrophic, we've seen them overcome that before. I mean, 2 years ago, they were muffing punts like they were getting bonuses every time they did it. So,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm not concerned about this at all. I've got it at a 2. It was not a stellar performance by these guys, but Dave Tobe has been around for a long time. He's widely regarded around the league by NFL people as one of the best special teams coaches in the game. There's a reason why he's still in Kansas City. And, he's done a tremendous job with guys like Harrison Butker and Tommy Townsend. Like, it's a new rule. It's the first game of the new rule, all this crazy wonky stuff. They'll settle in. They'll be fine. And I'm quite interested to see what kind of kooky stuff he and Andy Reid come up with to try to take advantage of that in the regular season. But I'm not worried about the special teams at all. If they continue to look bad throughout the preseason, I still won't be that worried. I'm sorry. It's going to have to leak into the regular season before I start to panic too much about that. Right. Yeah. Let's see. Let's go to the chat here. KCDC says Tobe is sandbagging. Yeah, I agree. Justin Haynes says Madden 25 doesn't have the new kickoff. Man, I don't even think I'm going to get Madden 25 this year. I'm just going to keep playing NCAA football. But anyway, that's a different podcast. All right, let's go back to the to the panic meter. And again, let us know in the chat where you're at on the panic meter with these. A few more to get to. The defensive back performance against the Jaguars. This is one I saw heating up on Chiefs Twitter during the game. You shouldn't have let L'Jarius Sneed go. It was just stupid. They can't cover anybody because the Jaguars got a couple plays on them. Where are you on the Chiefs defensive back panic meter?
As a charter member of the Dave Merritt fan club, I cannot allow myself to get higher than a 3. I've just seen them, pull hidden gems from nowhere into that secondary and turn them into gold. We've seen that with Charvarius Ward, L'Jarius Sneed, and I have a feeling it might happen again. Shamari Connor's a stud. Justin Reed wasn't playing. We know he's a leader back there. So I don't know. I think it's Jaden Hicks was playing in his first pro game, right? They're still experimenting at cornerback. There's just no reason to panic when you have Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo kind of heading these units up. And then Trent McDuffie is one of the best corners in the league, one of the best young corners in the league. I think almost every under 25 list has him way up there. Almost every, outside of the disaster that was the NFL top 100, everyone from PFF to The Athletic, I mean, everyone else has him as a top 50 player in the NFL. He's that good. He's probably, I don't know that I definitely wouldn't take him above Sauce Gardner or Pat Surtain, but he's in the running for like the 3rd or 4th best young corner in the league. So I just don't see how you can worry about that unit, given who they have out there, given the history of coaching up the secondary, even though they don't spend on the secondary.
I'm with you, man. I am at a 1 on this one. I am not concerned about the defensive backs at all. L'Jarius Sneed was a very good player for the Chiefs and had a career year last year. These guys turn out cornerbacks like crazy. And even if I was a little bit worried at some of the plays that I saw against the Jaguars, this is Steve Spagnuolo we're talking about. This is a scheme-heavy defense. They're not doing jack in a preseason game against the Jaguars. There's no game plan. They probably just went out there and they were like, just guard them. Like, they're not trying to confuse the quarterback. They're not doing anything exotic. They're not doing any of the things. Steve Spagnuolo is so good at helping his players, putting them in a position to succeed. They're not doing any of that in the preseason. So, You get a couple guys here that from the Jaguars. They're all jacked up. They're playing the Chiefs, trying to make the team. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a totally different. If you're the Jaguars, what you need to get accomplished in the preseason is so farly is not a word, but so far and away different from what the Chiefs are trying to get accomplished in the preseason, which is mostly just to get out of there without anybody getting injured. Don't trust anything like that you see. This defense will be fine. It's much more likely that one of these young Chiefs corners, or like Watson, is going to end up being an all-pro than it is that they're going to be getting smoked all year.
So on Farley not being a word, I mean, how dare you with the Chris Farley slander, right?
Fair point.
Quick point on L'Jarius Sneed. Cornerback is a roller coaster position. It is not stable year to year. L'Jarius Sneed has been a really good player, especially in the slot prior to last year, but we had not seen anything approaching what he did last year when he was shutting down Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. And as he ages and with that knee and in a new system, we are unlikely to see that ever again. You just can't say that, especially at that position, that L'Jarius Sneed was going to come back and do that again this year and do that again next year. There just isn't a track record at that position or with that player to say that. And they brought Chris Jones back, who's one of the most impactful players in the NFL. They're prioritizing young offensive linemen, I believe, like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. So they just had to, especially with wanting to kind of be conservative with the cap and not get in trouble there long term, because we know the Chiefs just don't go all in. L'Jarius Sneed didn't fit their plans, and I just don't think he's going to be as good in Tennessee this year. Do you, Patrick?
No, I think it's, again, much more likely that he reverts back to being the guy that he was before last year than he ever has a season that good again. And that's not to knock L'Jarius Sneed. I love L'Jarius Sneed. He's one of my favorite Chiefs ever. I love the way he played the position. I loved his willingness to tackle, which he was excellent. He could blitz the quarterback. He was super versatile for this team. And he made one of the all-time great clutch Chiefs plays in history in the AFC Championship game. I mean, you talk about an effort play. That punch out was so massive. So the Chiefs may not win the Super Bowl if that play doesn't get made. That's a much tighter game if he doesn't do it. He's as far as I'm concerned, he's an all-time Chief for what he accomplished during his time in Kansas City. But one of the things it's the same way in fantasy football. A lot of times if you're in a dynasty league, sometimes it's better to be a year early than a year too late. And you need to know when's the right time to move on from some guys and what to prioritize and when. And I think the Chiefs have done a nice job of that. And their ability to turn out cornerbacks, there was no reason to overpay for L'Jarius Sneed with the way that they play in general and the way that they cycle through cornerbacks. So not worried at all.
If they let Charvarius Ward go, and he's been a top 10 corner in San Francisco, they've done it before. They have done this before. They've done it with defensive backs, Marcus Peters, Juan Thornhill, the Honey Badger. They just don't re-sign these guys. It's just they see a competitive advantage in their ability to develop cheap secondary help. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah, amen to that. All right, last one on the panic meter, running back depth. I've seen some people say, hey, we're just one play away from a Clyde Edwards-Helaire being back in the starting seat. But then you get, Carson Steele, romance cover model, Carson Steele. I don't know if you saw my show on over the weekend, but I joked on the pregame show that I had not looked up a picture of Carson Steele, and I joked that he was a romance novel cover model. And then I looked up his Instagram after the game, and he is in fact a romance novel, not in fact, but the he looks like Fabio. He's got the long blonde hair, and he's absolutely jacked. So, how do you feel? I mean, let's throw Carson Steele in the running back depth pool. You've got Generic Prince, who the word is he was getting run with the ones. To be maybe primarily the backup for Isaiah Pacheco, but then Clyde Edwards-Helaire still number 2 on the depth chart. How do you feel about this, and where are you at on the panic meter?
Well, I liked what Football Thor did this past weekend. So
I like Football Thor.
Carson Steele is intriguing. I know Andy Reid likes a fullback. Kind of, if you think back to the sausage years. He's one of the last holdouts, and a lot of the better teams in the league do like a fullback. The Ravens and 49ers both like utilizing a fullback and keeping that versatility on the roster. So that's going to help, especially if he can the fullback dive like stopped working a couple of years ago. And I think that's why we had Andy Reid kind of move away from that position. Also, the Belldozer could do some fullback type stuff, right? You had him. So I like Carson Steele, but as much as I like Isaiah Pacheco and think he is a tough son of a bitch that plays through injuries and runs over anybody in his path, he has been hurt consistently, and they're putting a ton on his plate, especially without Jerick McKinnon here this year as kind of that change-up pitch as the pass catcher. It's just a lot to put on his plate. And if he goes down, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a third-string running back at best. He knows the system. You can give him a few handoffs a game. You can have him like dabble in pass protection to give the other guys a breather, but you do not want him carrying the load out there. He's just not built to do that. Not to disparage him or anything, but we know what he is at this point. He's a guy that you can count on to be on the roster and kind of an emergency back, right? My dream here is a midseason trade for Alvin Kamara. I don't know if you've heard me talk about that yet, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But I just don't like the current situation. So I'm going to say 8. I'm going to say I'm an 8.
I'm the opposite end of this. So I'm going to go with a 2. I just don't think running back matters for the Chiefs. I really don't with Patrick Mahomes. I think Clyde is a replacement level running back. I think he can get you what's there and nothing more. And with the guys that they've won Super Bowls with, not to disparage them, but come on, man. They're not a running football team. It's not in their DNA. They just need guys who know their job and can come in and do it. I wouldn't mind swapping. I would have liked to have let them to have tried to get Austin Eckler this offseason, because I thought, he would have bring a dimension in some of the same ways that McKinnon did for them. But whatever, man, fine. If it's CEH, maybe the Broncos cut Samaje Perine. I wouldn't mind if the Chiefs picked him up and brought him in. Maybe it's Deneric Prince. I haven't seen enough of Deneric Prince to know, if he could be equally as good as a Samaje Perine or a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So at the end of the day, I feel like if the Chiefs were really concerned about running back, we'd know it. And I feel like they know that they've either got guys on the team, on the practice squad, that they feel like they can plug in. They can do what they need them to do at the running back position. And I would be shocked, even if Isaiah Pacheco were to get injured, if we were sitting here midseason and we were like, man, it's the running back situation. That's what's sinking us. I don't think it matters for the Chiefs.
Well, when you put it in that context, I can't really be an 8. I'm an 8 if you isolate the running back room and you just look like, could this be better? And it could be a lot better. But in the framework of the Chiefs and how they run their offense and what they like to do, we just have to think back to Damian Williams. What has Damian Williams done outside of Kansas City? It's not like he was a world beater. He had great track speed and, could take it to the house, but really in some ways a replacement level back, like you said about CEH, just a different kind of replacement level back. Yeah. So I think they're not concerned about this. And also keep in mind that on cut day, running backs are one of the positions that get cut the most and end up on different teams. And we've seen the Chiefs do this in the past. We've seen them do it not very successfully with Le'Veon Bell and a little bit more successfully with Shady McCoy. So I would not be surprised to see them go out and get a veteran back here in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Shout out to our guy, KCDC, in the chat, who gifted 5 Arrowhead Addict podcast memberships. I see a bunch of people snatch them up. That's awesome. I hope you check out the Discord. Drop me a DM, say hello if you're able to. I say this every time this happens. What KCDC just did, in my opinion, is a prime example of why you want to be a part of the Arrowhead Addict podcast community. These guys and women who are already spending their money, their hard-earned money to support the show and the Chiefs content that we do here, are spending more of it to try to grow the community. It's incredibly generous. It's awesome. That's the kind of group we have. And we try to keep it positive. And appreciate you, man. So happy to meet some of you all in the Discord, maybe during the preseason game tonight. Okay, that's it for the panic meter. We got to move it on because we're running a little long, as Adam and I always do. let's just quickly preview this Chiefs-Lions game. I know a lot of people are wondering how long the starters are going to play in this one. I went back. Well, here's what Andy said. Let's start with that. He said, as far as the play time goes, this one will take a half, and then we'll kind of fill in after that and just see how the rest of it goes for the third and fourth quarters. What does that mean? It means he's saying that the starters are going to play for the first half. Are they going to play for the first half? No. I went back and I looked at the Chiefs preseason games from last year. I didn't pull the snap counts, but I did look at Patrick Mahomes in particular, and he played in game 2. He did not play in game 3, but he played 3 series in game 2. He threw 15 passes. The first drive was a 3-play drive. The second drive was a 5-play drive. They punted on both of those. And then the last drive was a 10-play touchdown drive. Then they went to Shane Buechele. Now, they were trying to figure out the backup quarterback thing with Shane Buechele and Blaine Gabbert last year. So that that could have eaten in a little bit to the time that they were going to play Mahomes. But I think it's probably going to be exactly like what we saw last time, a couple series, and it's dependent upon how the offense performs. I think Andy would like them to get a nice touchdown drive under their belt. If they did that on the first drive and everybody looked great and a lot of people got involved, that might be it. He might yank them. If they have a couple, maybe they only kick a field goal or they have a 3-and-out or something, they'll play a couple series. But I do not expect the primary starters to play the entire first half. I think they're going to want to get a longer look at Carson Wentz. But you might see some younger guys like Xavier Worthy. Don't be surprised if Xavier Worthy plays longer than Mahomes and Kelsey. That's definitely possible. Maybe not, though, with the injury to Hollywood Brown. But they did that with Rashee Rice last year. He was still on the field when Shane Buechele was playing. So we'll see. But this is likely the last you're going to see of Patrick Mahomes this preseason. And I'd say that's good news. Would you agree, Adam?
It's great news. I don't need to see him again. It doesn't really matter. We've learned over the years. I mean, unless the offensive line is just crumbling before him, give the guy a decent defense. Make sure Travis Kelce's out there and he's going to be fine. I know he likes to take a good hit. Makes me lose my breath every time he does it in the preseason. I'd like to see them come out, have a super crisp drive. Maybe they have revenge on their mind since the Lions came into their house and made a big deal of beating them on the home opener. I doubt stuff like that really matters to the Chiefs because every single team in the NFL makes a big deal about playing the Chiefs. So they're accustomed to that. Who knows? Who knows with coach speak? But we're not going to see that much of Patrick Mahomes. I think there's no way he plays over 3 series. If the over and under is 4, I'm hammering the under, right? Yeah,
I'm with you. And so just one more on this game. I'm not going to ask all these questions that I have here for time, but which players are you looking forward to seeing in action? I can give you a couple of mine off the top. I want to see some more Carson Steele. I want to see Hicks. I want to see some of these other guys get some run. I'd like to see a little bit of the tight end Wiley. Those are some things I'd like to see. But other than that, just get everybody getting out healthy.
Yeah, I think my main guys are players that have a chance to really step up in the absence of veterans due to injuries. So you mentioned Hicks. He's not on my list, but Wanya Morris and Xavier Worthy, obviously. This could be a preview of 2 years from now. The Chiefs are probably not going to bring back Hollywood Brown. Who knows? They could surprise us and love him so much he's back in Kansas City long term. Maybe he values winning more than stacking up money. Hard to say. I doubt that. So this could be a preview of what the Chiefs look like without Hollywood Brown in 2025. Same thing with Wanya Morris. I don't know that Jawaan Taylor is definitely going to be a Chief next year. They could probably wiggle out of that contract and save a lot of money if Wanya Morris looks good. FAU. We need to see a little bit more pop, a little bit more juice there. Yeah. I think it was fair in year 1 to reserve opinions and be patient. Defensive line, very hard to hit the ground running like George Karlaftis did. So I'm not going to panic there. But if he doesn't look good soon, we need to see him contribute, or I will maybe start to worry. And then the guy I'm most curious about this weekend is Joshua Williams. This is his mom's spaghetti moment. Jalen Watson's not playing. If there was ever a chance for him to just seize this job and run away with it, the time is now. And I really am excited about his upside, but it's just hard to be confident that he's going to take that job with the way Spags and everybody else is talking about it. But he does have the physical tools to be the next guy in the lineage of Charvarius Ward and L'Jarius Sneed. And I would love to see him do that. I'm just not sure he's going to.
Yeah, and you've got a great matchup here with, depending on who plays, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they've got some guys out here, explosive offense in Detroit. And like we said earlier, you're not going to see the Chiefs' real defense or anything probably too exotic from either of these teams. But if you get the chance to go out there and line up against some of these pass catchers for the Lions, just one-on-one playing man coverage or something, that's enough to see a little bit of what you got. So excellent list. And let's just hope everybody plays well and gets out of there healthy. But God almighty, FAU, we got to get something from FAU, man. It's time. Like your first round pick, man. Like you gotta do it. Okay, let's move on to our member mailbag. I asked our Ring of Honor tier members what questions they had for the show today. We got a couple of shit posts and a couple of real questions, so we'll run through them real quick. Adam, will the Chiefs bring in a guy like Juju or trade for somebody giving the injury to Hollywood?
No, absolutely not. They have shown that they do not panic at the wide receiver position, nor should they. And Juju Smith-Schuster is a shell of his former self, who was already a shell of his former self. So I just don't think Juju has any juice left. He's washed, in my opinion. We thank him for his service, but he is not needed here anymore, especially when Rashee Rice really fills that power slot role that he used to play.
Yeah, he's got paper mache knees. It's over, man. It's over. I'm with you. 2 shit posts from KCDC and Kahlua Chief. KCDC says, is Justin Reed and Andy related to Andy Reid? I don't think so. That's a no. To which Kahlua Chief responded, are Jaden Watson and Justin Watson brothers? Don't think that's the case either, but appreciate your participation.
They could be stepbrothers. I mean,
yeah,
at least the age works with Justin Reed and Andy Reid. There's no resemblance. They're a different generation. I mean,
they're all brothers out there on the field, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So then KCDC came back with, seriously, who is more likely a Chief by the October trade deadline, Donovan Smith or Jet McKinnon?
Donovan Smith. I don't think either of that likely, though. The Chiefs, when they move on, they tend to move on. I think they'll look at another running back, and hopefully they'll be fine at tackle. But if there is an injury that's more serious than what happened with Jawaan Taylor, they may need to call Donovan back up and get him on a plane.
Yeah, your brother Zach says Smith. I agree. Look, Jet McKinnon was awesome. Picked himself up a couple of rings, was a big contributor a couple of years ago, but it was kind of clear last year that they didn't have a ton of faith in him. I mean, they had faith in him, but they knew that his time was kind of over. They weren't putting him out there as much. Pacheco was established in the role.
He's old. He's ancient for a running back. He's like 32 and he's had a lot of injuries. I love Jet McKinnon. He's one of the most efficient receiving backs we've seen in the league over the last number of years, but I just don't think he has anything left.
No, it's time you're comfortable enough with Isaiah Pacheco's blocking now that like it's time to turn it over to a young guy and try to develop some people. You use those veterans when it makes sense, and they did. And now it's time to move on. Okay, the Common Shaman, who says Hollywood's over 750 yards seemed like the lock of the century with AA hosts even saying over 1,000 yards. Is it still a lock? What do you think, Adam, with the injury? If he misses 2 to 4 games, can Hollywood Brown, what are you taking? Are you going to place the bet on that? Over or under 750?
I think I'm taking the under until I see the Chiefs have a different approach. They spread the ball around so much that I've kind of learned my lesson here. I'm not probably going to bet on anybody going over 1K except Travis Kelce, as long as he's wearing number 87. So I'm going to take the under. How about you, Patrick?
I'm with you. I'm on the under. In fact, I don't know. Like, it might have been the under. I think that was a good projection for him if he played the whole season. You got to remember, he's the third pass catching option on this team, more than likely. Now, maybe he gets lucky over the top with the speed, but by and large, you're going to Travis Kelce, then you're going to Rashee Rice, and then you're going to Hollywood Brown. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Xavier Worthy becomes a little bit more of a favored target if he continues to develop by the second half of the season. So Hollywood Brown's a really good player. He's a great piece to have on the team, but I'm going under with the injury. Okay, and lastly, Rhino says, with literally nothing being said about Rashee Rice's situation, which is more likely, him getting suspended late in the season or not at all this year? What do you think, Adam?
Probably late in the season. The NFL is not going to give us a lot of warning here. I think they're waiting for a legal resolution here, but we've seen with Willie Gay in the past it can just drop out of nowhere. I think the same thing has happened with Charles Omenihu, Frank Clark. You just never know. The league isn't exactly consistent when it comes to suspensions, right?
They're not. And I'll tell you what I think. I think people have convinced me I don't think he's going to get suspended this year. And the reason I think that is because the trial date, according to court records, the trial will begin on December 9th in Dallas. And so I think this is one of those situations where the NFL has decided we're going to let the legal process play out. And we all know how the legal process goes. That could be, even if it were the fastest trial in history, if they have the trial. Now there could be a plea out at some point, but all these things take a little bit of time. And if they're starting December 9th, I mean, the Super Bowl is going to be over, man. Like, even if he walked in on December 9th and said, I plead guilty and we have a plea deal and this is what it is and I'm going to do probation or whatever, the NFL is not going to just turn around immediately and hand down their punishment. That's just not the way that they operate. They're going to schedule meetings and all that stuff. And so I think it's going to happen in the off season, and he'll probably miss the first 4 to 6 games of next season. If he's not in jail, which I don't think it's going to go that way, but you never know, man. Weird stuff happens when you commit felonies. So let's knock on wood.
It seems like he's got a good legal team, unlike Chiefsaholic, right? He has a good attorney. I think what they're going to do is they're going to kick the can down the road. They're going to try to get all this court stuff rescheduled until after the season. The ideal time to take that would be the first 6 games or first 4 games or first 8 games, whatever it may be, of the season. You definitely don't want a suspension coming down in December or something like that. I forget what the ruling is. I don't know if the suspensions actually count for playoff games. I haven't actually looked at that in a while. Do you happen to remember?
I don't know. I wouldn't think it would make a difference in the NFL's eyes, but maybe it does. I hope it does. They only suspend people for regular season games. Yeah, I got to do a little bit more digging on this, but right now, the last time the Chiefs talked about it, they said they hadn't any communication from the league about it. So it seems like they're just going to kind of wait and see what happens here and how all this stuff plays out, and I'm not saying what he did wasn't serious, but when it's not like obvious, like some sort of awful domestic violence incident, or there's like video or something like that, like this was a traffic thing where some people did get hurt, but nothing crazy. It seems like, thankfully, they just may back off, wait for the thing to play out, see how serious it all is, let the facts get out, and then go from there. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen this year. I just don't. So
that would be great for him too, because he can hit the ground running and pick up where he left off last offseason. And you think with continued success, maybe Mahomes and Kelce and the rest of the Chiefs culture can kind of bring him in and get him to mature a little bit and stop doing the self-destructive behavior that threatens his career.
It's crazy, man. It's just absolutely insane behavior. Like, what are you doing? You've got a winning lottery ticket. You've won a Super Bowl. You have a long career potentially ahead of you to leave a legacy, and just stop it with the knucklehead behavior. I mean, we've all been young. We all did stupid stuff, and we all are lucky to some degree that some of the stupid stuff we did didn't result in anything serious happening to us. I just hope for Rashee Rice's sake, because in the interviews I've seen with him, he seems like a nice young man. Just had some judgment errors, and I hope this scares him straight, man. And he's like, man, I could have killed somebody. My life could have been over. And if I was the Chiefs, I would just I would find every Henry Ruggs article I could, and I'd make him sit in a room and read them all and read about what happened to that poor woman that Henry Ruggs murdered. And,
go talk to Dante Stallworth. He is someone who's been through a similar situation and turned his life around. Like, anything they can do to kind of get him to see how close he was to throwing it all away would be helpful. But he has to realize that. I know he's 23 or 24 years old, and we're all kind of stupid at that age, especially us men. But yeah, he's got to wake up, because he's a hell of a football player. He's better than I think a lot of people expected he would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Last one. Oh, no, that was the last question. So we got a couple reader reviews to do. Now, I say this every week. Another great way to support us is to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review over there. If you leave a written review, we will read your review and any question you ask us right here on the podcast. It's a great way to support the show. It costs absolutely nothing but a few minutes of your time. Please leave us an honest review, but 5 stars, of course. And we're trying to get to 500 reviews over there. We're in the 400s, I think, somewhere. So we're calling on everybody. If you've never left a review, if you want to update your review, please head on over. I would love to read yours on the show next week. Okay, let's get into it. First up, this one's from the 3rd of August from NBFUGT. Oh, no, I read that one already. Sorry. 8-9, Criminal Zebra. This is a hilarious one, Adam. Kadarius Toney MVP. Here's what he says. He left us 5 stars, by the way. If Kadarius Toney has 1 million fans, then I am one of them. If KT has 10 fans, then I am one of them. If KT has only 1 fan, then that is me. If KT has no fans, then that means I am no longer on earth. If the world is against KT, then I am against the world. I mean, you just gotta love the troll here. You don't think that he's really the all-time KT? Do you think maybe this is KT that left this review?
Who's to say? But to say that you're going to unalive yourself if you're not a KT fan or something, that was just kind of poetry. It was poetic. What can you say?
It was very poetic. And see, this is what you can go and leave a 5-star review, and if you leave something clever like that, you get it read on the podcast. So it's like open mic night on the Arrowhead Addict podcast. So we appreciate the review from Criminal Zebra. And that was a criminal comment, by the way. All right. Next up is our guy, Jalen Butler, 813, longtime listener, says one of the best ways to stay update on the Chiefs. This show continues to improve in a congested field of podcasting. Podcasting year-round from the new Intangibles show on Mondays, Tuesdays with Sterling, Wacky Wednesdays, OG Hour on Thursdays, and you can't miss game day shows. I love the ample amount of Chiefs content in this golden era of Chiefs football. Keep it up. So we got 2 questions from him. A fun question. What's worse, mowing the grass or snow blowing? And I'm going to jump all over this one, Adam. It's snow blowing. I live in Chicago and deal with both of these things. I actually enjoy mowing the grass. I know I don't have a big property. I'm not out there on a riding lawnmower with a beer, but I like working on my property. I like making it look nice and taking care of it. I do weeding and spray and all that stuff. And it doesn't take me very long, 20 minutes to mow the lawn and do a little bit of weed whack and maybe 30 minutes. And then I get to sit down on my patio, enjoy the beautiful scenery, and drink a beer. The snow is, that's like, okay, I'm living in Chicago. It's the city. We get dumped on. It's 5 a.m. I've got to work. I have to get out and snow, shovel the snow so that we can get to the garage and the car so nobody dies on the sidewalk in front of our house and we don't get fined. It's so it's not at my leisure. I'm forced to go out there. It's freaking cold. My snot's freezing in my nose because it's Chicago. My back is killing me because I'm 41. I don't even have a driveway, Adam, because they have alleys in Chicago. So I just have to do like the approach to my garage and then the sidewalks and the patio. Brutal. Hate it. Shovel, snowblower, doesn't matter what kind of tools I have. Gross. Just give me like one snowfall, very light dusting for Christmas morning, and then leave me alone the rest of winter. How about you?
I got some bad news for you. If you think your back is hurting at 41, just wait till 45. So
yeah. And I'm lifting a kid. I'm going to have a toddler when I'm 45. It's going to be brutal.
I'm a horrible person to answer this question because I haven't lived around snow in a long time. I'm in Alabama now, lived in Austin for a long time, just haven't been around. I've lived in Florida, California, just not a lot of snow since I left Missouri. But it is, it's pretty painful. Don't do a lot of yard work either, but I think you can make the argument that that's an enjoyable process where you feel a sense of achievement. You kind of look at your pretty yard work or landscaping or yard or whatever. You sit back, you relax, like you said. Getting rid of snow, it's just like, okay, now I can start my day, but it's already off to like a horrific start. There's just no positive angle you can take when it comes to snow.
Yeah, and when you cut the grass, man, like you've got a few days, depending on how low you cut it. You don't got to deal with it, especially if it doesn't rain or anything. Snow, you'll go out there, you'll break your back, and then like the next morning it could be back, and it just keeps piling up. And if you're a decent human being, you're going to help out your neighbors with the snow. You're not going over and cutting their grass, but like, I have an older woman who lives next to me. He's lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. I'm like, when it snows, I'm doing her walk as well, and of course I tag team it with some other guys on the block, but like, so you got to do that. I mean, it's a brutal situation. Miss me with the snow. And then it gets all gross, especially if you live in the city. It's just like, if it doesn't melt, it just starts turning into like black sludge, and it's detract in your house. Nope.
At least you guys are prepared. I forgot about like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago in Austin, they had this thing called the freeze where it got down below 10 degrees and it snowed a bunch. And everyone was like, what the hell is this? Everything shut down, including grocery stores. Nobody could drive. Just nobody knew what the hell to do with it. So it was kind of like a snowpocalypse, but fun memory.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happens when you get snow in those warm weather places. Everybody flips out. It snowed in Dallas once, and I think it almost shut down the whole city. Okay. And then so we had a question, an actual football question from Jalen. He says, football question. I love Andy Reid's approach to playing starters in the preseason. It's such a head scratcher to me why some teams don't play their starters. If you were the coach, what would you do for starters playing in the preseason? That's a really interesting question. How would you handle it, Adam?
Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce would not play. I probably would not play them, because if you have those 3 guys come postseason time, you've got a better shot than anybody winning a Super Bowl. So why even take the chance of getting them hurt? I know Andy Reid is old school, but why even take the chance of getting them hurt this time of year? They do not need the reps. They've had enough reps. Other than that, I think the rookies, I would play a ton. The second-year guys, I would play a ton. I might play the offensive line together a few series, just get a little continuity, get used to each other. But I'm kind of like, why play your studs kind of guy?
Yeah. Look, I'd probably go the Andy Reid route. If I'm gonna get into football coaching, I'm gonna emulate one of the best to ever do it, and that's Big Red, baby. He does it. He's smart about it. Yes, something bad could happen, but Patrick Mahomes could trip off a curb and get hurt that way too. So, I think it's calculated risk, but I think it's pretty low that anything terrible is going to happen to those guys. And it could just as easily happen on the first play of the season or the first play of the preseason if you're Hollywood Brown. So I'd just go the way that Andy does it, get him the reps. I think it shows some good leadership to everybody else is playing. Mahomes goes out there. He's not standing on the sideline like he's too good for everything. I think that's part of the calculus too. So that's the way I would handle it. And I see Sean in the chat says, I can't believe Patrick wouldn't mow that sweet little old lady's lawn. Look, man, I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she wants done with her lawn. Okay. Like maybe she doesn't want it cut. Like, when there's a stretch of hot weather coming up, I let my lawn grow because it shades, it prevents drought because it shades the lawn if the blades are a little bit longer. And then when it's not going to be too bad, I cut it a little bit lower because that's how I like how it looks. So I'm not going on someone else's property and cutting their grass, but I will take care. I will dig out her car and I will dig out her sidewalk because she doesn't want that snow there. Could you imagine if you were out there shoveling old lady's walk and she came out and she was like, hey, what are you doing shoveling my snow? I want that snow there. She's got to get her
might
mail.
be like that about her yard. I mean, people are very particular about their yards. You don't want to mess with that.
And she doesn't cut her grass, but she handles her own gardening and everything like that. She's absolutely the most wonderful neighbor, sweet, kind soul, love her. And if she wanted me to cut her grass, by God, I would be over there doing it. All right, everybody. Hey, listen, we got to get out of here because when Adam's on, we always go long because we're old pals and we have a good conversation. So we hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back on Saturday for the Chiefs-Lions big preseason game. Last chance to see probably the starters before the games mean something. So we'll be here. Pre-game show, halftime show, post-game show, breaking it all down for you. So make sure you hit that notification button if you're watching on YouTube, and you'll get notified when we go live probably about roughly 30 minutes before kickoff on Saturday. And of course, we'll be there to break it down for you after. Thank you to producer Richard for making this whole thing work. He'll be there on Saturday as well. Shout out to Adam Best, the blog father, for joining me today. My name is Patrick Allen. We will see you guys not next week as well, but also on Saturday. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.